going on, guys? It's your host, your boy, George Mackay, back in studio again today, pre-recorded as I always do during these wonderful COVID-19 times, and I got a good one. I got somebody special, somebody who is the current reigning, defending NWA champion. I'm not going to waste any more time on introductions. Let me welcome Nick Aldis to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you, sir?
Hi, George. I'm all right. How are you?
I'm great, man. It's a Tuesday evening. I just had dinner. We're about to talk wrestling, and I'm about to talk with a man who is the 1,079-day current reigning NWA champion. That's an insane title reign. Incredible.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, uh, it's not the most active title reign, given the circumstances. But yeah, I mean, look, it was doing pretty good as it was, but now we're getting into some pretty crazy numbers for the modern era. So yeah, it's a pretty cool feeling.
Absolutely. And you know what? I don't, COVID aside or not, I mean, the defenses that you've had are impressive. One of my personal favorite matches that you had was Cody, obviously your rematch with Cody, but when you brought in one of my former guests, Camila Brickhouse, as the insurance policy.
Right.
I loved that angle. When you brought her out, I was like, oh, this is awesome. She's going to be able to contain Brandy and he can go ahead and win his championship back. How did I asked Camila a little bit, and she said that, Dave Lagana just kind of called her up and said, hey, this is what we're thinking. This is what we're working. Was there anybody else in the running for that kind of insurance policy role when you were looking for that?
Not really, because she was the first choice, and she said yes. So it worked out. I mean, I was not familiar with her. It was one of those situations where. In the lead up to the rematch, we were coming off All In, which was such a big event and had been such a success, and really and my match in particular had really captured a lot of the attention and a lot of the coverage. So it was kind of like we knew that we had this great opportunity with the rematch, but we also knew it was only 6 or 7 weeks following, so it was kind of we had to have some unique elements to it. Obviously, the fact that it was the Lightning One era NWA's sort of first standalone pay-per-view was one thing. We did Nashville Fairgrounds, which had sort of quite a lot of significance, and we ended up setting a box office record for wrestling at that building. So there were, and then we decided to do 2 out of 3 falls to make it different. But we were just trying to think of things to make it unique, so that people would pay to see it again so shortly after the last one. And given all of the wrinkles of the match in Chicago, we just kind of started there and went, okay, there was a period in the match in Chicago where Cody could have been counted out, so in my mind, if I'm the one if I'm kind of making these, as a competitor, as a former champion, if I'm sort of making my case, for things that I would want, I would say, well, I want it to be 2 out of 3 falls, so that we can't have any more, so that there's no excuses, there's no, he's got to beat me twice if he's not going to have everything. The whole story of the Chicago show was that everything was in his favor. It was his event. He picked the referee. He picked he got to call all his own shots, and Brandy interfered. So it was kind of like we just started there and went, okay, 2 out of 3 falls. Brian Hebner's going to be the referee this time, not Earl Hebner. And then it was like, okay, and I said, well, the major thing here is that Brandy got involved. So obviously it would have been great if I could have had Mickey get involved, but that wasn't going to be able to happen. She's under contract to WWE. So I was kind of like, well, the next best thing, and turned out to be, probably a better thing in the long term, was like, what if I had a female enforcer, because I wouldn't have a valet, I wouldn't have a romantic interest, because again, everyone knows I'm married to Mickey, so it's like I always want to do stuff that's real, that feels authentic, So I was kind of like, but there's no reason why I couldn't have a female enforcer specifically brought in to neutralize Brandy Rhodes. And in describing this sort of character, Dave Lagana just said, I know just the person. You know, there's someone who I've sort of been keeping an eye on for the right time, the right spot, the right moment. And what about this? You know, what about this girl? And God, you know, they flew her out to Philadelphia, I think, to meet with me, just to sort of take her temperature on it. And then if we like the fit, then we'll shoot some vignettes or whatever. And I mean, she just has a physical presence, you know, that's second to none with women in the business. And she, you know, she walks in, and I'm just right away, I'm just like, okay, yes, like 100%. Like, she's so physically imposing, but at the same time, you know, she's stunning. She's got a sort of, there's just very, you know, people like her don't grow on trees, you know what I mean? They're kind of like a very unique human being. So it was kind of like, perfect. That's, you know, right there. Like, let's go. And look, she was very green. We put a lot of pressure on her, given the fact that, you know, very few people knew who she was. So it was kind of like she, you know, baptism by fire. She had to come out, and people had to sort of, you know, get through that first awkward couple of minutes of like, who is this, you know? And by the end of that show, everyone's just like, this is awesome, you know, like, I don't know who she is, but like, I'm feeling this, you know, like this pairing is, people got it right away. You know, people weren't going like, oh, wait a minute, like, he's married to Mickey. There was no inclination of anything romantic. There was no sort of, there was nothing sort of in that vein. It wasn't a valet kind of relationship right away, I think, because she did such a good job. And obviously we worked really hard on sort of getting all of that right. And just right off the bat, people just knew immediately what it was. And, you know, and it was different, unique. No one's really doing that in the business at that time.
Absolutely. And when I sat down with her, I compared her, and I hope this is a fair comparison. I compared her and you to one of my all-time favorites. I'm a Triple H guy through and through, but I compared you and her to the modern day Triple H in China. Do you think that's a safe comparison?
Yeah, I mentioned China when I was describing, you know, with the concept. You know, right. I said China type. You know, not necessarily. It doesn't. You know, she didn't necessarily have to be quite as sort of, you know, scary or anything like that, but just a physically imposing woman, you know, with size and you know, physical presence. That's what I wanted, and she was perfect.
Absolutely, and that was one of my favorite matches. But I gotta kind of rewind back a little bit to All Out. How was it being part of probably one of the most defining moments in wrestling history in the last 10 years? Because it's literally an independent pay-per-view. It's being put on by the wrestlers. It's literally just, you know what, we're going to go after the big promotions. We're going to show them that we can do this and it could be successful. And not only was it successful, but it was a game changer because that led eventually to AEW. So how was it being a part of that moment in history?
Right. Well, there's a lot to unpack in that question, but I think it's important to be fair in describing All In, because look, obviously I had no involvement in the planning of the event, you know, besides my own stuff, but I had a lot of control over that part of it, and that's a unique element of that show that I think speaks to its success. In that there was, yes, it was a collection of all kinds of different talent from all over the world, from different promotions, who had all made a mark in the industry, mostly outside of WWE. You know, when you think about myself, the Bucks, Kenny, Marty, Pentagon, you know, there was a larger number of the main card of that show had never been in WWE than had. So I think that was unique for the United States. So I was proud to be recognized, I guess, as one of the people who didn't need WWE, who didn't need a WWE history to be able to play a part in drawing an arena full of people. You know, that's very validating, because look, everyone, you know, we all get told in our careers, oh, you should be in WWE, you know. And I mean, look, if I had $1 for every time I've been told that, I wouldn't need to wrestle again, you know. But it's like, I'm not, and that's it. Like, there's no, you know, it's, I don't really give it any more thought than that. But it is, but obviously, you do look at the grand scheme of things, and you think, gosh, you know, I wonder if I'll ever have the chance to experience those types of events without working for WWE, you know, because obviously you still need, you know, a significant amount of financial backing and, you know, logistic support and everything needs to, you know, there's a lot of things that need to come together to make an event like that happen. And that, and so to, you know, to be involved in one that sold out that quickly, and then to be in, you know, arguably the true main event of that show was, yes, obviously hugely gratifying and you know, a defining moment of my career. I would say that I think Ring of Honor's role in it doesn't get credited enough, because yes, it was conceptually, it was independent guys, you know, an independent talent, you know, and an independent show. And it did help. It did fundamentally change the landscape of the business going forward, because yes, it did. It was proof of concept for Tony Khan to decide to invest his, you know, in the industry. But I don't think it's fair to say it was an independent show. I think it was a Ring of Honor show, you know, that they allowed to brand differently, and Ring of Honor had the foresight to welcome and book other talent, you know, outside of their contracted guys, which really is something that people have talked about for years but can never agree on. Why? Because no one can agree whose name goes at the top of the poster, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And on this occasion, actually, Ring of Honor went, yeah, we'll do it, and we don't even need to be, because if they'd have said Ring of Honor All In, you know, it wouldn't have felt the same. It had to feel like it was equal. Had to feel like it was an equal opportunity kind of event for all the people involved. So I think they deserve. I think they did credit where it's due, in terms of their ability to sort of look beyond their own ego and say, okay, we'll facilitate it. You know, we'll technically own it, but we'll be silent partners in it, right? Like, it, you know, and I think they deserve credit for that, because you know, I hear that a lot, like, oh, it was the precursor to AEW, and it's like, it was a Ring of Honor show,
Right?
You know, like it was, and you know, they kind of they were almost, you know, they kind of sacrificed themselves in a way, if you look at where the business went after that.
I would agree, and I didn't mean it in any form of disrespect to leave Ring of Honor.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, I like to give credit where it's due, and I think that Ring of Honor's role in it needs to be highlighted more than it is overall.
Absolutely, 150% agree with you on that. And it's kind of funny that you've mentioned Ring of Honor, because that was actually my next question. I feel like we're meshing, Nick. I feel like you know exactly where I'm going.
I'm glad one of
So my next question is that everyone's talking recently about, again, another landscape change that they're all believing they're seeing for the first time, which is cross branding and cross promotion. AEW and Impact, everybody's working together. Oh, yay, look at this. But Ring of Honor was doing it for a long time first. Ring of Honor, New Japan had a very healthy relationship for a very long time. And that's two big juggernauts in the game. So that's, again, something that is being overshadowed and highlighted now by the current staple of the business, right?
Well, and the NWA and Ring of Honor have worked together to bring the Crockett Cup.
Absolutely.
2019.
Yes.
Where, again, it was the top talent in the NWA and the top talent in Ring of Honor in the main event, you know, for the world title. So it's like, yeah. And look, that's just something that exists with this sort of cult-like fan base, I guess, where it's very much about it's always, it's funny, I see it, and it's almost like a political party. It's like it's always the party first, and you know, facts second, you know, or context. It's always like, and look, and hey, at the end of the day, it's it's not worth getting, it's not worth getting upset about. It's just is what it is. But yes, it's no, I see a lot of that too. I get asked the question, hey, do you think that we could see, more cross promotion with the end? Oh, what you mean, like we did with House of Hardcore, like we did with Ring of Honor, like we have with AEW? I don't. And in the Crockett Cup, we had teams from New Japan and we had teams from CMLL. So it's like, yeah, no, we're already doing that. We've already done it. Like it's just, I don't know. People like to. There's such a fascination now, I think, with the behind the scenes element of the business that like one of the areas of that company's appeal has almost become that they let their fans feel like they're sort of helping run the company.
Right.
And so then of course they're going to pat themselves on the back because they feel like it's their company. Of course it's not their company. They're funding it, they're paying for it, like they and so, but hey, that's a sound marketing strategy for them. But yes, it can lead to some it can lead to some troubling kind of comments and sort of unnecessary aggression towards other companies, I find, which is just, I don't know, I just find that all kind of, it gets old really quick with me.
Absolutely, absolutely, it does. And let's talk a little NWA for a while, because I was, when NWA Power came out and it was surging on the internet, I was, to use a pun bluntly, I was all in on that stuff. I loved it. I loved the old school feel. I love the studio feel. I love the vibe. I love the having the matches, and then right after the matches, you cut a promo right there at the desk. How was it to kind of be back in that NWA element and seeing that old school style kind of come back to life again in a modern era?
It was, I'd put it up there with the sort of top 5 experiences of my career. Like that first day, that first show, or that first set of tapings. I think everyone who is involved in that looks at it as, as one of the fondest memories of their careers. Because it was special, and that venue, that place is special. There's an energy to that building that just works. And obviously it was gratifying for me because I was, I'm so heavily involved in the process, that to just, to be privy to the development sort of bit by bit, and then to finally get there and to walk in to see the finished thing was just, so, and watching everyone else come in and just see them all start, because I'm sure there were a lot of guys who were a little skeptical, or were thinking like, we're doing studio wrestling, I guess. I don't know why. I don't really, because they weren't all in on the concept or on the brand like I was. And they shouldn't have, because they didn't need to be that invested at that point. They were just guys taking a booking. I think that I watched a lot of the guys come in that day, guys who have been around too, guys like Ken Anderson, or Aaron Stevens, or even Cornette, and just watching them come in and see their faces light up and just start, and then immediately them start getting excited and go, oh wow, this is where we do promos. Oh my god, I can't wait! Like I want to do a promo right now, because it works.
It does.
Like that style of TV works, and we zeroed in on that vision, and we believed in it because we felt like if you were familiar with that style of wrestling content, it was going to be nostalgic, and if you weren't familiar with it, it was going to be new and fresh. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of a win-win, and that's why we're standing by it now.
Absolutely. It was a win-win for me. When I saw the first episode of Power that I watched, I think it was the second or third episode, I watched it and I was like, man, this just brings me back to my childhood. Now, mind you, my childhood wasn't that far ago. I mean, I'm only in my 30s, but still, it brought me back to those moments, and it was like, this is awesome. But to my daughter, who had never seen it, I showed it to her, and she was like, Dad, this is so cool. It's so different. It's more it makes me feel like I'm right there as opposed to being in a
Right.
big arena where I could get lost in the crowd. And I said, yeah, that's what makes it special. And her and I, we were faithful with it right up until COVID happened. Well, I gotta
Yeah.
ask this because Billy, I don't think Billy gets enough credit for how great his mind is, his wrestling IQ is. How was it working with him? Because he gets a lot of flack for the TNA stuff and the Impact stuff and what was going on over there when he took it over there. But how was it here, working under this kind of new banner and bringing life back into this nostalgic product?
Well, working with him has been, you know, a fabulous experience, you know, for the most part. Like at the end of the day, you know, you don't work with someone for this length of time and commit this hard if you don't vibe with them and you don't think that uh, in the long run, you know, we got a chance to make a go of this. If I didn't feel like that, I wouldn't have committed as hard as I had, in spite of obviously the position I'm in here. Um, does that mean that we agree on everything? No, absolutely not. But our process is so much better than anywhere else I've worked in that. While Billy as a boss, you know, he's the final say, and that's very much established. You know, he's like, it's his money, it's his company, it's his brand. He is very protective of where he wants it to go. Uh, but when it comes, but part of that is he understands that the best thing for his company is to let me do me the way I want to do me,
Mm-hmm.
and for Thunder Rosa to do Thunder Rosa the way she does it, and you know, and so on and so forth. He's not sitting there going, "Here's what I want you to say," you know, and you know, there's very little agenda besides doing what's best for the audience,
Right.
and doing what makes sense. You know, doing where this, you know, most of the time, if you're doing things right, most of the time it's pretty obvious where things should go. So it really isn't that difficult. Now, um, there's obviously, you know, we're experiencing we experience new challenges all the time, and obviously COVID was a big one, and he wasn't. I don't think, you know, that obviously wasn't part of anyone's plan, but I think he in particular, it hit him hard emotionally. I think because we were at a point where you have to remember we were on course to sell out an arena with me and Marty too.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw the numbers. We were going to, we would have, if we'd have tracked the way we were tracking and compared to our other events, and you know, we would have sold that arena out. And when you start a venture like this, you're talking millions of dollars of investment, and with an understanding that it's probably going to be a few years before you start to see any return.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's pretty demoralizing to get into like year 2, year 3, where now you're really starting to ramp up your level of investment, because now you're, excuse me, investing in more infrastructure, more talent, more personnel behind, you know, to do more jobs, and, you know, storage for merchandise distribution. You know, we were starting, you know, these were all things that that the company was now venturing into, and then suddenly, boom, you know, you can't do anything. You know, and we're not in a position yet where we were getting a rights fee for our content. So suddenly it's like, wow, like, you know, I mean, it's crippling.
Yeah.
So it's been rough, but I I think that he had a period where he wasn't sure where he wanted to go next, and there were, you know, people like to talk about the sort of talent exodus or whatever, but most of those guys were not under full-time contracts. They were they were just under short-term contracts for the duration of the season. So of course, you know, when it came to once those expired, you know, it wasn't a whole lot for Billy to be able to offer them.
Right.
You know, so it was kind of like, hey, you know, sorry to see you go, but good, like we're happy for you when so many of them, when so many of them end up getting opportunities that, let's face it, would not have come had they not been seen on NWA Power. So it's like there was I don't think there was any resentment for that from him, but it doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't help. It doesn't mean it doesn't sting when he sits there and goes, "Golly, I invested all this time and money in that person, and then now they're an asset for this other company." Of course, like there's no resentment to the individual, but it's just it's not fun. It's like it'll be like restoring a car, and it's almost roadworthy, and then someone comes and takes it off your hands, and then they do the last bit of the job, and now they're cruising around in it, and you're like, oh man, So, but working with him is challenging at times because of his, he doesn't have a ton of experience on an administrative side in wrestling.
Right.
But it's also super rewarding on the others for that exact same reason, because he trusts me more than anyone else I've ever worked with. And I've been able to prove that he's right to do that. Like, I was with TNA for 6 years, and they were on and with the exception of the last year, I think it was on a major cable network, prime time, and yet now nobody talks to me about, nobody even brings up my time as Magnus in TNA. Like, everyone talks about the NWA and my career in the NWA and what I've done here. And we started with 3 people and a YouTube show, and it's like, so that's a testament to Billy having trust in me and going, okay. I mean, because there are times where, think about it, the entire direction of the company has literally gone where I wanted it to go, based on what I thought would work with my angle, and he's gone, okay, what do you think? And it's worked. We ended up with with things like All In, and then the 70th and the Crockett Cup, and so it's like we have a trust now that is unlike anything else I've ever had in the industry, and that's why there's a loyalty there, and it's also why I'm super excited about the next step, because I really hope that within the next few weeks we'll be able to have something to show everyone that really validates why I stayed put, and really, so when people see it, they'll go, oh, okay, now I understand, so I hope that we're going to be in a position to be able to do that very soon. And but it's, look, working with him is like working with anyone. There are good and bad days, but it's been an immensely rewarding experience.
Absolutely. And when obviously that time comes and you could share this with the world, you're going to come back on your new favorite podcast, Straight Talk Wrestling. We're going to have another conversation about it all, right?
Well, I mean, there's you can always hope.
All right, I'll take it for what it is. I actually do have a TNA question, because you were one of the major reasons that I started watching TNA. And I actually started watching TNA during your TNA Heavyweight Championship run, 2013, 2014. And I loved the feuds with Jeff, with AJ, with Samoa Joe. And those are 3 guys that I have been a fan of forever. And they made me a fan of you, and you made me a fan of you. That's when I was like, damn, Magnus is badass. I love that title reign, and I loved everything about it. But I have to ask, my question is quite a simple one. During that title reign, you were again facing guys like Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy. Who was the most creative to work with in the ring during your title reign? Who did you have the most fun, chemistry-wise, in the ring during that title reign?
Well, the problem with that question is that the 3 guys you just mentioned are probably my 3 favorite opponents in TNA.
Okay.
Much, and really for a lot of the same reasons, in that we had good chemistry. and their style was unique and complemented mine. You know, it contrasted mine and complemented it. I'm a big proponent of clashes of styles make good matches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't personally. I get a little sick of all the sort of dream match booking where it's always kind of like the top luchador against the other top luchador, and the you know, one really good Japanese wrestler against the other really good Japanese wrestler, and the you know, I don't. I feel like that's what I call video game booking,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like it sounds good, it looks great on a screen, where you sort of go, oh yeah, like they're perfectly matched and blah blah blah, but there's not a whole lot of story to it, you know. And a lot of the time when you have matches like that, what happens is the story is basically we're going to do absolutely everything to each other and keep kicking out and keep kicking out and keep kicking out until eventually one of us doesn't kick out. And it's kind of like, right, okay, that's the story. Like, it's, to me, it's kind of like those matches should be once a year, like with the right moment, because obviously there's a very obvious reason why it works, you know, in the sense of like it's the idea is you want to create you want to create as much doubt as possible over who's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Cody and I worked, because no one could ever, you know, people could never really, they couldn't really predict who was going to win, you know, on for multiple levels. But overall, like clashes of styles and contrasts of styles and contrasts of character and contrasts of sort of storytelling is what makes a great match, because that's how you tell the story.
Mm-hmm.
So I love wrestling Jeff Hardy, and Jeff was, you know, very good to me and would say the same. He was, you know, I love wrestling you. You know, he's so smooth and like, you know, we you know, we're so different. We you know, we mesh really well. And it's like, yeah, because when you see a film and it comes down to the final fight scene with the good guy and the bad guy, by that point in time, you've understood the dynamic between the two.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you need to understand why you want one guy to beat the other guy, and there'll be some advantages that the other guy has. A lot of the time, it's you know, the bad guy will be slightly bigger and slightly stronger, and you know, or slightly more cunning or more crafty, you know, and the good guy will have a little more heart and a little more aggression. He's a bit tougher, you know, or you know, he finds one opportunity out of nowhere and takes it, you know, it's more resourceful, right? Like, and those are the stories I like telling in matches.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like when you have someone who's got a very distinctive moveset like AJ or Joe or Jeff, it's like, okay, now you can start to have fun, because now you start thinking, okay, well, you know, people want to see them hit this, but like, well, when he goes to do that, I'm gonna stop it. You know, I'm gonna shut that down. I'm gonna grab him and counter it. I'm gonna not today. That's psychology, you know. So I would say your original question was who is the most imaginative
Mm-hmm.
on a story, and I would probably have to say AJ. I mean, it's there's nothing in it with any of them, but just because AJ was so talented and so versatile that he could, like, if you take our match we had in St. Louis for the finals of the Bound for Glory series,
Mm-hmm.
it was like he won that match with the spinal tap, you know, and it was like nobody sort of went, oh man, he didn't hit the Styles Clash. Like, he could have, you know, he could have hit the Styles Clash. He's hit me with the Styles Clash before, but the way we sort of, you know, the way everything played out, and the way that match needed to be for me is, it was like the Spinal Tap made more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, and so in the end of that match, everybody, you know, a perfect wrestling match, everybody comes out with better. And in that match, that match made me in TNA because it was the first time where I'd been presented as a babyface against the top babyface. I mean, the guy, the franchise player of TNA.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't get booed out of the building. There was a sense in St. Louis, there was a sort of collective kind of, hey, we're witnessing something here. This guy's earned it. So, but the key element of it was I had to lose, because it just wasn't quite my time yet.
Mm-hmm.
And if we could get that right, then I was going to be just teed up and set up for when it was my turn. And it was done perfectly because of the way that, that AJ, worked out, that decided to win with the spiral tap. And, he was always, right from the beginning, from when I walked through the doors there, he was always very giving, was always like, hey, come, let's go get in the ring and, I'll show you some stuff. And, hey, what would be a good move for you? Like he was always thinking of stuff for other people as well. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to, I think some of that's rubbed off on me, because of guys like Joe and AJ and Jeff, they're very giving. So I've tried to adopt the same philosophy, especially with the NWA. I'll try to take guys and be like, hey, what would be really good for you to do with this? Or like, hey, I had an idea for an angle for you, or I had an idea, I thought it might be cool if like you started saying this, whatever. So, because that's how we move the business forward. A rising tide lifts all ships.
Absolutely, it's growing together, and it's elevating everyone. And that's the way I look at my life. Is the same philosophy that I have. You got to grow together, you got to elevate together, and it makes for good business, because if everyone's at the top of their game, it gives everybody something special to look forward to on a regular basis. So do you think, going back to your psychology question, this was a great question because I actually had this. Do you think nowadays psychology in the ring, the storytelling, I call it the dance, that perfect construction, that perfect breakdown, that perfect orchestration, do you think that's lost on today's up and coming talent because they're always looking for the high spot, or always looking for the holy shit or oh my God moment? Do you think we've lost the psychology of wrestling?
Well, that's what, if you were asking me that question in court, that's where my lawyer would object and say you're asking a leading question. Because you basically just projected your opinion into the question.
That's true. That's true.
But if that is your opinion, I would probably agree with you.
Okay.
For the most part. I think the difference is that if you look back through especially through the boom periods, which is where people tend to go when they're making comparisons, they tend to look at the boom period. There were matches in that period too that were too choreographed and too planned and too many big moves, too many kickouts, too many high spots and stuff like that. There was one of them. There was one or two of them on the card, and they weren't particularly significant in terms of the positioning on the card. I think over time, there was a period where a collection of fans romanticized this idea that smaller wrestlers were being underappreciated and overlooked, and should have been higher up the card and things like that. And it bled into everything. Mm-hmm. And I would make the argument that what you see now is that less people are watching. So I think somewhere along the line, the business became too heavily influenced by critical acclaim, mm-hmm. and not commercial success, because there is always room for it. I just don't think it should be the dominant style overall. Mm-hmm. There are people, I had a conversation the other day with on Keeping It 100, mm-hmm. where I was like, how many times I have to bite my tongue when I hear people from the previous generations lamenting to me that, oh, guys don't sell enough. All the guys now do dives every match. All the guys now, they don't. They all kick out of their finish. The guys don't know how to tell a story. And I'm sitting there going, well, I've never done a dive, right? Like, I think I sell a lot. I always try to tell a story, and I nearly always win with my finish. So I'm sort of going like, no, it's not all guys. It's some guys.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's social media and performative activism have led to this sort of overgeneralization of everything with wrestling, where it's like there is no, they don't say, they don't say, oh, that was a bad take from that guy on that one particular subject. Now they're like, that guy's an idiot, he's stupid, he's a hater, okay, boomer, never listen to anything he ever says again, and let's all cancel it. As opposed to like, no, that was a bad take on that thing. The same way that the guys from the previous generation see one match, or they see one, sometimes not even a match, they see a clip of a particular, I remember a spot that was from a Ring of Honor show that got, that was one of the ones that kind of got a lot of this sort of war kind of going. Even guys like Daniel Cormier and stuff weighed in on. They went, "This isn't wrestling. This is choreographed bullshit." And stuff. I was like, "Well, it was just with one clip from one match."
Right.
And look, we're all guilty of it. I've been guilty of it. But, people will send this stuff to me and they'll go, "This is what wrestling is now." And I'll be like, "No, this is what some wrestling is now."
Right.
There's always been some wrestling that's, that you don't like. I think the difference is that, again, the overall level of entitlement and activism has gone up to where I remember watching Raw when I was a kid, and I won't name anyone in particular because I don't want to offend anyone, but let someone's match would come on who I didn't particularly care for, right? And I would probably and I might go, oh no, not this guy, but I didn't feel compelled to like write about it or tweet about it if Twitter had been a thing, or to go on the internet and sort of proclaim my sort of disdain for this. I went, it'd be 7 minutes, and I'll go make something to eat, or I'll go take a piss or do something else for a few minutes, and then I'll tune back in. It's we've got to stop. People have got to stop creating these unrealistic expectations that an entire wrestling show should be a la carte for you just the way you like it. Because what's happening is that the reason the audience is shrinking more and more and more is because the ones who complain the most are now getting drunk with power, and now they're going like, now change this, now change that. Oh, this one wrestler said a thing I don't agree with, so it's time to get rid of him. And it's more and more. It's power. They're drunk with power, and it's like, we need more women on the show, more women matches. I want a women's tag titles, and now I want and then you do that, and suddenly it's like, oh, you guys have been neglecting the other tag team champions. We need to see more of that. And where's the Intercontinental title? Or like, why isn't there another belt yet? We got that all the time with the NWA. Like, where's the TV belt? Now where's the North American belt? Now where's the cruiserweight? Now we need the light heavyweight belt. Oh Jesus! Is everyone on the show going to have a belt?
Yeah.
Like, what's the point?
Absolutely.
But because it's not, they don't really care about the belt, George.
Yes.
They just, what they care about is having power, because they're people who didn't have the courage to get into the business,
right,
or to make any sort of meaningful contribution to it. And suddenly they're gratifying themselves by going, see, look what I did, I made this happen, I have influence, I'm important, pay attention to me. And it's like, I used to make this comment to Dixie, because Dixie cared too much about what Twitter thought. But I used to say, Dixie, Twitter is like owning a bar and having where, you know, and having locals, you've got 10 locals who every night will prop up the bar. They will sit on all those stools and they will prop up the bar every night, and they will buy, over the course of an evening, they'll buy 6 or 7 drinks. Okay. And hell, they might even order a sandwich, you know, or some fries. They might order some wings. They might put a couple of bucks in the jukebox. They may play pool, you know. So yes, per head, you probably make a little more money off your 10 locals every night. But it's the equivalent of, then you decide, you know what, I need to start bringing more people in here. Maybe I'm going to start having live music on a Wednesday. And those 10 people going, no way, don't have a band in it. We don't want a band in here. We can't hear ourselves think. We don't want to talk to, you know, we don't want a band in here. If you get a band in here, we're out of here. And you go, okay, all right. Okay, so
we'll stick to the jukebox. We'll stick to the jukebox.
Yeah. Or then it's like, okay, well, we're gonna start doing happy hour. Happy hour? Are you kidding me? This place is gonna be full of yahoos from the business district. Oh, they're gonna be pissing us off, and they're gonna ruin the whole vibe. And you can't do that. Okay, I won't do that either. And soon enough, they start complaining about how things already are.
Right.
You know.
Right.
Like. And before you know it, you start going, wait a minute, I've got to jump through hoops just to keep these 10 guys happy. And they're still complaining, right? The reality is they ain't going anywhere.
Right.
They're going to stay right there, you know, and let them complain. Like, we need more people in here. Our thing is like, we're looking at the business and going, okay, there's a hell of a lot of wrestling catering to those fans. Now, if those fans check out our show, great. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. If those fans start trying to tell us how to do our show,
we got a problem.
No problem. But it's just it's going to be a waste of their time,
right?
Because we're looking to get back the millions of people who have fallen off, who I meet on a regular basis, who go, you know, I used to watch wrestling, but now, you know, I just don't get it anymore. And I saw this one thing a few weeks ago and I didn't get it. Like, who was this guy? I don't really understand what the hell was going on. And I go, I understand. They want wrestling. And that's what we're offering. Wrestling. We're proud of it.
100%, and you should be. Like I said, I love the NWA product. And 2 more questions, then I'm going to let you go enjoy your evening. This is a question I got to ask because, I mean, if I didn't, all of my Straight Talk faithful, that's what I call my fan base, they would be like, you're an idiot, George. So I have to ask it. Thunder Rosa, she defended the NWA women's title on AEW. Has there been any talk? Or I got Nick, I'm sorry. He rolled his eyes at me. Is there, it's going to be a yes or no answer. Real quick question. Is there any chance that you may be defending or bringing the NWA championship to AEW?
I mean, there's always a chance, but I don't particularly have any desire to do it at this point.
Okay.
I'm more interested in, because if I do that, then who needs to watch the NWA?
100%. So why was Billy okay with Thunder Rosa doing it? Can I ask that question?
Thunder Rosa, well, first of all, AEW reached out and specifically made that request because they, you know, their women's division, you know, needed, you know, would benefit.
Oh, of course, and it did. It did 100%.
It did 100. Yes, of course it did. And also, you know, in spite of the fact that Rosa had obviously done really well on her time on NWA Power, she wasn't as well established as, you know, as the NWA champion as I was. Right. So it was kind of like it made more sense, and it was okay because the more eyeballs that, you know, that we you know, she's a phenomenal talent. So the more eyeballs that can, you know, get on her, the better, so that then when we're ready to operate again, we can take advantage of that asset.
100%. And she is a great talent on the show. She's amazing. Huge, amazing.
Yeah, and she's, you know, she's also, look, her contract structured differently to mine, so it's like it was important that she, you know, that she got out there and got to work and you know, kept working, you know, and stuff like that. So it's, you know, there was a lot of different elements that went into it. But for me, I don't, it's no secret at this point that that Tony had asked me to join the company, back in January of 2019, and I was very flattered that he did, and I was and we had a nice conversation, but ultimately I was only interested in working there if I could continue working with Billy for the NWA, because I've not for any other, and so it wasn't about that, it wasn't about their show or their product. I'm confident that I can make it work wherever I
can. 100% you can.
Like I think that the best thing that came from All In and that whole culture that kind of came from in that whole time period was that people started to realize that, oh, you don't need this whole creative team and this marketing machine behind somebody to, for them to establish themselves. You should let them, because obviously Cody had done a great job of rebranding himself. Here's me, like 100% at that, like what you saw at that point, but what you see of me now is 100% self, made, as far as like sort of on a creative standpoint. Everything I do and say came from me. Kenny Omega, the same thing. Like, Marty, same thing. Bucks, same thing. So it's like, so I'm confident that if everything worked out and I showed up on that show, like, I'd nail it. But at this point, I was willing to sit and wait in order to maximize that impact for the NWA, when we were able to run again, because as much as it would be fun for me to do anything like that, they don't need it and I don't need it. So it would only be a situation, we would only do it if there was a situation where we could both see some benefit from it.
Of course.
Like if it was going to help their business and help my business. And right now, it would really only help them.
Right. It's not mutually beneficial right now. No, it isn't.
Yeah, because it's not like we can. If I was to show up next week, it's like until we had something tangible to say, okay, now you need to, like, I'm here because we've got a pay-per-view or we've got this or that, But until we have something like that, if I show up now, it's just benefiting them. And it's like, I wish people would understand that and not take it out of context, but they probably will. And who gives a fuck?
I don't think anybody would take it out of context. I know exactly what you're saying.
Someone will make a headline out of it, and they'll say, Nick Aldis says he doesn't need AEW, and it benefits them more than me, and everyone, oh, fuck him, he hates AEW,
welcome
whatever.
to the wonderful world of marks in wrestling. My final question: when you were on Taking It 100 with Conan, you had a great quote, and I'm not going to get it. I read this article today and kind of tightening up my research. I'm not going to get into it, but you guys can find it on WrestlingNews.com. But one of the quotes I love from it was about the attitudes of current wrestlers in the business. But one of the quotes I loved was a quote you said about yourself. Take it from a guy who got signed very young, didn't know what he was doing, was able to move up the ladder both monetarily and with his spot on the card. I made a lot of mistakes and enemies too, and I'm still paying for it now. But it wasn't that I didn't know any better. The difference is that you have to be self-aware. Look back and go, whew, I can't believe I thought or I said that. For the most part, I owned it. I was a dumb kid. I didn't know what I was doing. I was green and I had an attitude. I thought I was indestructible. That was a great quote. And I think it's something that we can all learn from, not just in the wrestling world, in everyday life. I've had my mouth consistently get me into trouble. Believe me, you can ask my wife. I get my foot in my mouth almost on a daily basis.
Right. I mean, look, you got to be hungry, but you also got to be humble. And I'm breaking new ground for me. I was asked to give a talk to a university, which I'm doing on Thursday.
Well, congratulations! That's amazing.
The part of the talk I actually worked on today was covering some of this in that it's quite well established now in the world of psychology that humiliation is felt more strongly as an emotion than anger or even fear.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Humiliation, in humans in modern society, is felt so deeply and so profoundly that it's often the trigger that leads to some very bad decisions, very bad circumstances. And Freud even said, the pain of the ego is the worst pain. And I think that, and the reason I was discussing that is because in the talk I'm explaining how I find it really ironic. There's a bit where I'm covering what the average experience is for someone breaking into the wrestling business, right? So you take bumps over and over again. You hit the ropes. You have to do hundreds of squats, and then you're learning basic technique. And it's a real wake-up call because it's not as easy as it looks on TV. And then if you've got a good trainer, they're probably going to try to run you off a little bit. They're going to do a lot. They're going to make you do things over and over again, and then they're going to tell you that it was shit, and they're going to tell you that you suck and that and like, what the hell was that?
Mm-hmm.
To see if you quit.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about how some of that approach has sort of come under fire now from the sort of woke culture, even though these are the same people that are more than happy to humiliate people online, humiliate wrestlers with, anonymously or sort of, through sort of performative activism or like,
keyboard warriors.
Yeah, right, exactly. And I just find that sort of interesting because one of those two things serve the purpose while the other one does not, right? In the sense that a trainer doing that to a trainee is preparing you for life as a wrestler. Because if you're going to work in the industry, they need to know that you're going to work hurt, that you're going to show up and make your commitments no matter what. You're going to work if you're sick. You're going to work if you've got personal problems at home, and it's not going to bleed into your work. And you're going to commit whether there's 10 people in the building or 10,000. And you're going to own the room and take control of it, no matter what's being said to you, whether you're being heckled on from a character standpoint or a personal standpoint. And I've been there. I mean, I've been in buildings, especially given my circumstances, given who I'm married to and things like that, where I've had the worst shit imaginable said to me, and it has nothing to do with my wrestling character, nothing to do with what's happening in the match. It's just some guy trying to, make a personal attack at me just to try to see if he can throw me off my game. So you have to develop a conditioning. You have to develop a level of self-awareness and the ability to let that roll off you. It's not easy. But the other part of it is there's a lot of things in wrestling you can only really learn by experiencing them. And one of them is the politics, because no two particular sort of circumstances of politics will ever happen the exact same way. And the period that I'm referring to the most, when I was making that comment, I hope people take it in the right context, because I was kind of trying to create empathy for Sammy, in the sense that, like, you guys don't understand that, like, that when you're in your 20s, all this stuff comes at you really fast. And you're developing confidence, but you're still maturing emotionally. But you're being hit with all this stuff that you've never had to deal with before.
It's a lot of pressure, 100%.
Like, I remember everything I had, I'd never had anyone try to politically, professionally sabotage me at all. I'd seen it happen, but I always just kind of, that's just for the sort of tippy top guys, that won't happen to me. And then until one day it did. And I suddenly realized, like, wait, that guy's just he's trying to harm me so that it helps him. And I can't tell you the level of anger that that brings out, and like the humiliation, because then you're walking around going, everyone knows this, and like now and it's the same thing that happens with social media and things like that, is that you the more you stew on it, the more you go, well, I can't just say nothing, because then people are going to think that I'm a coward, and I've got to do something, because like I cannot let this humiliation stand. I must act, I must do something. And a lot of the time, the thing you do ends up not being the smartest move. Sometimes it's necessary. Like I would argue when I responded to Bruce Pritchard, like I thought about that, and I even spoke to him first to kind of try to get some kind of idea of like what, why on earth someone would do that. And it became, after weighing everything up, then I did decide, okay, there was no other motivation there than to just try to hurt me. So, that's, and I decided to make a response that I, backed up by evidence. It wasn't it wasn't just a kind of, completely emotional sort of knee-jerk reaction. Mm-hmm. But there were times going back, and I would argue, but I see the point I'm making with that is that whole thing is still a carryover from when I was younger and dumber and made bad choices, because he never let that go. Whereas I did, and I kind of owned it, and that's where I felt like that's where I felt a little disrespected, was I was kind of like, I owned that shit, man. Like, back in the day, like, we had some disagreements at TNA, and I sort of owned up to it and said, look, I was very young, and I could have handled it differently, and I'm sorry, and I apologize, and I appreciate, the stuff I learned, like working with you and stuff. And yet it was obviously just lip service, because the first chance he got, he turned around and buried me. But that's all coming from that, and that's what I'm referring to in all that, is that like, you have to be really careful, because it's not just about you in the eyes of the audience. It's also about, just because you decide that you're going to develop the maturity to move on from something,
right,
5 years, doesn't mean that the other person will.
No, that's true. Resentment is an ugly bitch. Yep.
Yes. So it's kind of like, hey, I don't know any more circumstances than that. But the other point of it was from a financial standpoint. If you could make, I'm very fortunate to once again be in a position where I'm making a good salary for being a wrestler. And fortunately, I've had more good years than bad, in that regard. But it's like, when you go from making, from knowing exactly what you're making to not knowing what you're going to make, like, that's scary. And that happened to me right when I had a kid on the way. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I've been in the most humbling position in that respect of like, okay, this is a business. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Pick your battles, and understand that the only thing that matters in the end is what you invested and what you came out of the other end with. Nobody's going to remember that one bad angle you were in, or if they do, then like, they're a nerd. Like, sorry, if they 10 years from now, people are still going, oh, do you remember that terrible angle you were in? I was like, oh, you do something else with your life, man. There's got to be more interesting things to talk about than this one bad angle I was in. Or I just look back to him a bit and laugh, like Brutus Magnus and all that sort of stuff. I just laugh about it. You know what I mean?
Of course.
It's not like I'm sitting there going, how dare you bring that up?
That was a great character, and I did it perfectly. Don't you insult me.
It's just kind of like, whatever, move on. And so yeah, but when I made that comment, it was more just to sort of highlight the fact that if there's any fans that have come along in the last few years, mm-hmm. they would have only seen me for who I am now. Mm-hmm. And that's great. Like, from my point of view, that's awesome, because it means they didn't get to see any of the failed attempts, any of the sort of the different attempts to get to the point I'm at now. But I just like to remind people that it's tough to get this stuff right when you're in your early 20s. And I'm not saying you give them a pass, but just remember, like, you got to have some empathy for the whole situation.
100%. I think that's great advice, and I think you hit the nail on the coffin. And I think this has been an amazing conversation. Nick, I'm honored and I'm humbled that you took the time out for me today. And I'm honored that you came on Straight Talk Wrestling. And I want to let you know now, I tell this to everybody, but this for you, I think, reigns really true. I felt that we had a great kick-ass conversation, and you are now officially a member of the Straight Talk family. Anytime you want to come back, I'd be more than happy to help you. And I now consider you a friend. I don't know what you consider me, but I could say, hey, Nick Aldis is my friend. We had a conversation.
Sure. Whatever helps you sleep at night.
Oh, I walked into that one. I know I did. All right, Nick, if anybody's
good conversation.
Thank you very much. If anybody's, not following you on the wonderful world of social media, where can they find everything that is Nick Aldis?
At Real Nick Aldis on Twitter, or at Nick Aldis on Instagram, and I've also launched my own supplement company in the last few months, Legacy Sports Nutrition. We've had our our best-selling sleep aid Recovery PM is available now at this point in time, especially with the seasons and the weather being the way it is, and all the unrest and COVID and all of the unease in the world. It's so vital that you get a good night's sleep. The World Health Organization has officially recognized sleep deprivation as a carcinogen, meaning it will cause cancer. It is that deadly dangerous to get inadequate quality sleep that it's now recognized as a carcinogen. So Recovery PM is a completely natural collection of sleep aids and natural sedatives and tranquilizers to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, sleep through the night. The feedback has been unreal. People are just raving about how effective this is, about how they go to bed and they sleep through the night, they wake up and they feel fantastic. Like, if you're one of those people that starts to hit a wall about 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's probably because you're not sleeping, you're not getting enough quality sleep. In our lives now, we spend all our time in front of screens, artificial lighting, with irregular sleep patterns and irregular stimuli. It's so important that you let your body adequately shut down. So if you go to legacystuff.com, and you can order Recovery PM. We've also got a best-selling testosterone booster on there, and some pre-workout fat burners. If you use code ALDIS, ALDIS, you'll get 10% off everything.
Perfect.
Legacystuff.com.
Absolutely. I might go there for that sleep aid, because I have an up and down sleep pattern for sure. So that may actually help me out.
Try it, man, for sure. I'm telling you, it's and there's nothing in there that you can get addicted to or will affect your own, body's functions. It's melatonin, tryptophan, 5-HTP, GABA, theanine is all natural occurring, but they're all proven. And the team that I developed the product with, we basically put together all the main eventers that help you fall asleep, and we put them all together in one, and it just works. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely fantastic. I will definitely check it out. And because I'm a glutton for self-promotion, @_Straight Talk on Twitter, @Straight Talk Wrestling on Instagram and on Facebook. Nick, I follow you across all platforms. If you want to follow me back, that'd be super awesome. Just a suggestion, just throwing it your way, Nick.
Oh, I'm getting a call. Sorry.
Well, as always, I am your host, your boy. I want to thank today's guest, Nick Aldis. Nick, when this drops in mid-March, I'm going to tag you in all the posts. If you have a chance, maybe if you're stopping somewhere for a coffee and you want to retweet it or share it, I would appreciate it. And as always, thank you so much, dude. It was an amazing pleasure and honor to speak with you today.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for another episode on Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. Also follow us on Facebook at Straight Talk Wrestling, on Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling, and on Twitter at _Straight Talk. And for all our merchandise, you can search us on ProWrestlingTees.com.